So I found my presentation is closely, the theme of my presentation is closely related with Professor Urata's presentation. And it's like our presentation, my presentation is like a comment paper on his, and probably it's also probably interesting for you. So first I should note that this is a joint work, based on joint work with Kawakubo-san and Horie-san. And about 3 years ago, Japan's Ministry of Finance started to provide customs data, the farm level transaction data to researchers. And we selected 1.5 years ago. So this presentation is based on our research at Policy Research Institute of Ministry of Finance. So there have been a lot of discussion on the impact of GVC participation on farm level productivity. And in Japan's manufacturing sector, the import share is almost 30% in recent years. So which implies that the importance of offshoring. And farms' effort to import cheap intermediate inputs causes a bias in the standard productivity estimates. It is so-called offshoring bias. So suppose, for example, TFP growth in one country, say China, might increase the welfare of other countries through a decline in the prices of traded outputs. But if the this mechanism is not carefully accounted for, there is a risk of overestimating the TFP growth of farms that use imported goods whose prices have fallen. So if Japanese farms import Chinese products, then we overestimate TFP growth of these farms if we don't take account of decline of price of intermediate inputs of this company. So using micro customs data, we can evaluate this bias. So I'm not saying the other countries, say China's TFP growth, don't have positive effect on Japan. I'm saying it have positive welfare effect, not through TFP growth of Japanese companies, but the decline of, we can enjoy cheap intermediate inputs from China. So preceding works, there is Urata and Nakamura, which first pointed to this issue, and Susan Hausman and others tried to evaluate the magnitude of this offshoring bias, and Arai and Fukao and other papers also tried to estimate. But I think this is the first paper using micro customs data and farm level try to estimate the offshoring bias issue. So this means the import premium in productivity, that more internationalized firms enjoy the higher TFP, is probably some part of it might be illusion and caused by overestimation of farm level productivity by offshoring bias. So our data, so very detailed the farm level transaction data by Ministry of Finance, customs data, and all transactions between 2015 and 2020 at HS 9-digit level. And we combined that data, farm level data, with Japan's survey of Japanese business structure and activities. It covers most of farms which employ more than 50 workers. And from this, we can get data to estimate productivity, like capital stock, sales, employment, intermediate inputs, and even R&D. And we quantify the offshoring bias with 3 steps. First, we construct 2 deflators for one dealing with the total intermediate inputs from I/O table of about 100 sectors, and the other dealing with separately with domestic and importing inputs. And we obtain two productivity estimates based on two different deflators. And we calculate TFP growth rates and define the gap in growth rates as offshoring bias. And so construction of JIP intermediate input deflator is, you know well, it's a standard Jorgenson type intermediate input deflator based on I/O table. And construction of deflators for imported intermediate inputs for each firm, we created deflators for imported intermediate inputs by assigning 3-digit level import deflators from the JIP database. So it's about 250 commodities, imported commodities. We have deflators, and we matched it with HS 9-digit level import value data of customs data. And we also calculated average value of firm level deflators for imported intermediate inputs across all firms in each industry. So we have HS 9-digit imported goods data. And some imported goods are capital goods, but the big classification, we excluded that. And we only take account of intermediate input. And we applied 3-digit deflator to deflate imported inputs. So this figure compares at each detailed industry level, relatively detailed industry level, how the JIP intermediate input deflator. This treats imported goods and domestic goods as one basket. And the blue line shows deflator for imported intermediate inputs. So this is focus on just intermediate inputs. And this is based on firm level data. And this figure shows the aggregated result across all the firms in each industry. So they move different way. And in the case of bottom right-hand side, these are important, electrical machinery sectors like household electric appliances, or the number 30, electric equipment, electric measurement instruments. There is a huge gap of domestic intermediate input price and imported input price. And again, number 33, information and communication electronics equipment. The imported price decline is much, imported price declined a lot in comparison with the total of intermediate inputs in this sector. And TFP, we took two measures. One is index method following Good-Nadiri and Sickles. The other is Woodridge's production estimation method we took. And we obtained two versions of TFP estimates. One is based on aggregated JIP intermediate inputs deflator. The other is we use farm level deflator in the case of their imports, farm level deflator based on customs microdata. And we then calculate TFP growth rates between 2015 and 2020 and compare the gap of two TFP growth. So TFP growth JIP is based on one deflator for each industry. And TFP growth customs, it takes account of, in the case of imported part, we used detailed 3-digit classification or data of deflator. And we define this as an offshoring bias. And this figure shows a little bit aggregated level, SNA industry classification, and each bin shows the average value of 10 or more firms. Horizontal axis shows import share, and vertical axis shows TFP growth differences. And you can see more and more, import share firms with higher import share tend to have higher TFP growth, offshoring bias in many sectors. And this is the result of regression. So the left-hand side is offshoring bias. And the explanatory variable, we used import share, and also import from affiliates, and also affiliate import share times import share. So we mean what we are trying to analyze is, in the case of imports from affiliates, probably whether offshoring bias becomes larger or smaller. And also, we also estimated impact of import share from China. And so we found that almost always import share have positive effect on offshoring bias. And from affiliate, import from affiliates, offshoring bias becomes smaller. And imports from China, it sometimes have larger offshoring bias effect. And we also control the other factors like firm size, employment, and R&D share. And this is a result based on TFP measured by Woodbridge, production function estimation. So results, the findings suggest that the offshoring bias is increasing in the import share. If a firm imports more intermediate inputs, then it is more likely to overestimate its productivity with the standard estimation methods. However, the impact is decreasing in the affiliates import share. And also the results imply that the bias increases when a firm imports more from China, although the magnitude is small. And there has been discussion on the GVC and productivity. However, when a firm imports cheap intermediate inputs, it leads to the overestimation of productivity using the standard method, in which we treat intermediate inputs as one basket. And to our knowledge, this is the first study to quantify the offshoring bias using the firm-level custom data. So this is my presentation. Thank you.